Welcome to another funky find where we learn about things before life was easy. So I have a quick story with this funky find today. This funky find is about what was known as white gold or sugar. But before you could buy it, you used to have to grow the sugar, okay? So funny story, my grandpa grew up very rural, poverty-stricken type of situation. There were 12 kids, 1 bedroom. They lived on what they ate. His father passed away when he was 7, so 12 kids, single mom. Woo! They had 10 pounds of sugar to last the year, 10-pound bag. And when it came springtime, him and his twin brother, they were young, like 10, and they thought, let's just help mom out and grow some sugar. So they poured all the sugar they had in rows out in their truck. And needless to say, sugarcane didn't grow, but they also were out of sugar for the year. So a lot of lessons from that story. This right here is sugarcane. Okay, fascinating piece of plant here. Okay, so this actually started, sugar came from New Guinea. The first reported findings of it were in about 8000 BC. The way that this it grows in really hot, tropical, humid climates, and it has to be cut with back then, it would have to be cut with a machete because it's very thick, it's very strong, it can grow up to 20 feet tall, and it was first kind of discovered. People used to chew on it as a stick, and it was sweet, and it was like, this is interesting. Well, somewhere between 100 and 300 AD, India began to harvest this sugar in a little bit different way. Instead of just chewing on it, they started to crystallize it. So how does that happen? How do you get this to those big bags of white little flakes we have today? These stalks used to be crushed, similar to like mills, with stone mills. Sometimes the stones were pulled by animals, horse, mule, oxen, that type of thing. So A, it was hard to grow. B, you had to cut it down. It was hard to harvest. C, then you had to smash it. So mind you, this was a very luxurious thing back in the day. Not just every old person was able to have sugar, okay? So, another fun fact, 1492 is when Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue. 1493 is when he brought the very first sugar cane plants from the Caribbean to America. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Christopher Columbus not only came here, but he brought the sugar with him. That was around the time it began known as white gold because it was so valuable. It was also traded with gold and silver. These unassuming pieces of wood that you might find in antique stores or vintage shops, they are usually skinnier at the bottom, wider at the top. They have holes that are conically shaped. So what they would do after, imagine you have to go get your machete, cut down your sugar cane, crush this thing, and it's hard as a rock. And you would get a syrup. Eventually, they would take that syrup, boil it down. Eventually, it started to form some kind of crystal, get thicker and thicker. They would also, with the sugar cane, they would mix egg yolks and ox's blood to purify the sugar. So there's that. They would mix all these things together. The sugar sap, the boiled down hot sap with ox's blood and egg whites. And they poured it into what is known as a sugar mold. So, I used to think these were just candle holders. They're pretty cool, long, whole row of candles down the middle of the table. Looks beautiful. Wrong. They have a much bigger purpose. So the sugar was packed into here with the purifying agents. And now this is probably more than likely a reproduction sugar mold. How you can tell is all of the original sugar molds had holes in the bottom. What were the holes for, you ask? So holes in the bottom, they would plug the holes with paper and then fill it up. And as it kind of hardened and started to dry out, they would unplug the hole with the paper, just take that paper out of there, and it would allow all of the syrup, what was left over, to come out of the hole. So there was this leftover sugar syrup. Fun fact, that leftover sugar syrup is actually called bastard. So you had your leftover bastard that would drain out of the sugar cone hole, and eventually the sugar that was left would dry and form like a cake, a hard sugar cake. And there was also a special tool, it was called a sugar nipper, to where it's kind of like claw, like a little claw, to where you could pinch some sugar out of this mold. So after, you know, you just have your cone of sugar, you just kind of have to cut or chunk off little bits at a time as you use it. You know, you're probably only getting 1 or 2 cones for the year, so you got to really tighten down that sugar usage. Another fun fact, it was usually wrapped in blue paper, blue wax paper with a red wax seal, and that was to kind of brighten the color, the white. It was not always white back then. They would also use lime to color the sugar white. So interesting, just all kinds of fun things I never knew about sugar. If you ever find a beautiful sugar mold like this, pick it up. They're beautiful pieces. They're hard to come by. Just remember, this is a pretty old, even though it's a reproduction, the idea of these have been around a long time. You know, if you think about it, fake sugar wasn't around until 1980s, okay? So we had real sugar. Of course, the sugar beet came along, but probably still using sugar molds for that too. So anytime you find a sugar mold, pick it up. This one's for sale at Pipe Creek Mercantile. And last fun fact, 1820 was the year that sugar started being granulated and the mold became null and void. If you find a pre-1820 mold with the holes in the bottom, very valuable. Buy it. And you can find this one at Pipe Creek Mercantile. We are in Peru, Indiana, open Tuesday through Saturday 10 to 5 and Sunday 12 to 4. Have a good day.